The stories shared on It Takes Balls are unique to the individual sharing. Always speak with your trusted medical provider for treatment options specific to you. Welcome back to It Takes Balls, presented by Testicular Cancer Awareness Foundation. Today I'm joined by a survivor from New York. Bob Jordan is joining me. Bob, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So we had like a pre-phone call, and you gave me a rundown of your story, but we're going to go through that together here today. You've been through it, to say the least. So, I mean, first, before we get into that, tell me a little bit about who you are. I know you work in marketing.
I'm a designer in Brooklyn, New York. I specialize in branding and packaging, and I've done quite a bit of work that's been all over the world, which is quite an honor as well.
Designer, that's what I meant, not marketing, but I guess they go hand in hand.
Yes. Yes.
So let's talk about your testicular cancer story. Like I mentioned, you've been through it. So, take us back to what led up to your initial diagnosis. What did you notice?
Yeah, so it's almost been 1 year to the day where I really noticed something that began. I've actually spent a lifetime snowboarding, and for me, that's how this began. In New Hampshire, Mount Washington, there's a ravine called Tuckerman's Ravine. At the end of every winter, I take a hike up there and go snowboarding. It's basically what's the only thing left for snow on the East Coast. So it's about a 3-mile hike up to the base of the bowl and then another 1,000 feet straight up. And you have to pack in all of your gear, which weighs about 45 pounds. So after a strenuous day of hiking up and hiking back out, I was in the parking lot and I felt like what was a pulled muscle. And for the days and weeks that followed after that, I felt like I had pulled my groin. And about 10 to 14 days after, I noticed a small bump on my left testicle that I needed to keep an eye on. Then I got sick. I got extremely sick. I had a fever. I had no idea what was wrong with me. I had taken multiple COVID tests, and finally, I woke up one morning and I had a 3-inch ring on my upper thigh, and I had realized I'd been bitten by a tick. So I was pretty much all hands on deck to make sure that I didn't get Lyme disease, and was making sure that I took my antibiotics, which are pretty harsh. And I came out of that cycle, and then I realized that bump had changed and it was time to see a doctor. And I was able to get in to see a urologist right before 4th of July. And I saw him in his Brooklyn office on a Tuesday. And he said to me, "I need to see you right away in my Manhattan office tomorrow morning. I'm concerned." And at that point, I knew things were changing pretty fast. I went in for an ultrasound at 8 a.m. and by 9 o'clock, my surgery was scheduled for July 5th. For me, that was a shock. It was a lot to handle and to take in. And for me that night, it was a difficult night. I spent the day on the phone. I talking to friends. The only thing that I could do was be outspoken about this because it was something that was out of my control. And when I finally was able to shut my phone off that evening and just be at peace with myself, I felt sorry for myself. I felt very sorry for myself. And in that moment, I actually took a selfie. And I looked at myself and I just saw a broken person. And in that decision, in that time, I made that decision to do what needed to be done and just to move forward. And that having a bad attitude and feeling sorry for myself wasn't going to fix anything. And it wasn't going to make my path go any easier. And I just needed to move forward with conviction. And even in that moment, I realized I didn't need a second opinion. My body hurt. My testicle had grown. I knew there was a demon inside of me that needed to come out. And so we made that decision. And then we also made a decision that I would be outspoken on my social media and that I was going to have to confront this. As personal as it was for me, that I was going to have to be outspoken about this because I couldn't communicate in the same fashion that I had been all day. It's virtually impossible to communicate with your friends and your loved ones and update them. I mean, I got to the point where I was just copying and pasting text. And so in that decision, it was easier for me to control the narrative and to put out information and to make sure everybody was getting the same information. And I began creating small animations for my social media and taking those design skills that I had and making infographics that would be easy for people to understand and that I could put out when necessary and update. And I'm really glad that I did that because it allowed me to connect with a host of people and get quite a bit of support. And had I not done that, I don't think that I would have received the same support in return.
I want to just take a pause here and ask a couple questions. So going back to the tick bite, in your head at all, was it the tick bite and the bump on your testicle, were those two different things? Or did you at any point like think maybe the bump was related to the tick bite?
No, I actually just had no idea what was going on. Having grown up in the Northeast, tick bites are common now. I had spent the weekend prior outside. It was a nice weekend. So, and I knew there was a chance just being outside that could happen. But until that red ring showed up, I really had no idea what was going on. And the other thing that really concerned me was I have a health monitor app between my Apple Watch and my iPhone. And it basically had shown that I was running red for all of those weeks. I was maxed out. If I was a car, I would have been redlined for 6 or 7 weeks. So I sort of knew that there was a problem, but I just couldn't put my finger on it between the tick bite and everything that had been happening. It was just, there was a lot of gray areas at that time. I'm not really sure if one helped push the other over the edge, or even just convincing me to go to a doctor. But I knew something was not right.
Yeah, I'm definitely, I don't think they're related, but I didn't know if like in your head, maybe you were piecing those two together at the same time, but that's okay. And then the other thing I was going to say is like the selfie when you were feeling down and the graphics. I mean, that's such like a artist thing to do. I love that.
So I documented every inch of this whole entire thing from that particular moment, from that first moment all the way through the very end. I documented through video, I documented through photographs, even as we'll get further into the story, literally every inch. And it was sort of fascinating to watch the progression of my body change over time as well. And I can talk more about that as we get further down. I'm very interested in putting it all together and sharing it because it's quite unique to see the whole timeline of the progression. And since it is what I specialize in, I'm really looking forward to finishing it.
Yeah, can't wait to see it. So you had was it your surgery was scheduled for July 5th, or was that when you got the call that, it would later be scheduled?
No, it was for July 5th. Okay. So I had gone into the doctors June 26th and June 27th. And so I basically was given a to-do list and very little time to do it. When I left the doctors on that Wednesday morning, I had Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday to prepare for my surgery, and which was not a lot of time. To get my CT scans, my EKGs, to go sperm banking, to do everything, even to prep my house to make sure I had groceries and had everything that I would need. I was really up against the gun. Luckily, a lot of projects that I've worked on throughout my career in New York have been very fast moving, 10-day projects. You don't sleep. That's what you focus on. So in my head, this was the most important project in my life. And I just executed what I needed to do and needed to leave emotion out of it, because if emotion got involved, then I wasn't going to be able to execute. And we just needed to move forward as efficiently as possible and just focus on what needed to be done. And then we can take a step back and dissect from there. Since I do live in New York, I have a 1-bedroom apartment, and I wasn't necessarily sure how I was going to do any of this. My mom has been so great throughout my life. She's been almost my nurse in such ways, because I've had so many injuries throughout my life. And she's been an EMT, so she's always the first one that puts me back together. So of course we have a unique relationship that way. She had flown down on July 4th and was there for my surgery, and it was nice to go out and share a beer sitting on the water while everybody got ready for the fireworks, and instead I went home and got to bed early. Had to be up at 4 a.m. for surgery. So when I got there, I actually, at 4 a.m. when I got up, I did take another picture of the last time that I saw my testicle, the last time that me and the boys were together. And so it was definitely on the larger side. But I did get in and out of surgery. Surgery was very smooth. I went in, I was out by 11:30 and back home resting. And I knew instantaneously when I woke up in recovery that demon had been removed from my body. I could just feel it. I knew that there was something that was in there that was gone. And that was a unique feeling, and it felt great. The next few days, I just pretty much laid low key, just recovered. I didn't have much reason to go anywhere. It was great. There was lots of good sports on at that time to watch. And I just recovered. And it was a tough recovery. What I didn't realize is that I've never had an internal injury before. So just because I saw, well, I didn't see, but just because I knew that there was a 1.5 inch incision, something that I've had stitches for in the past, I forgot that there's a lot happening inside that I didn't see. And I needed to be mindful of that. And that took a lot of energy, that it wasn't just an 1.5 inch scar, that my body was healing from the inside out as well. It was definitely painful. It knocked me down a bit from someone who's been in really good shape. Then this is where things start to get a little bit more interesting.
Before we get into the interesting part, I'm just curious. So was your orchiectomy in the Manhattan office, or was it in Brooklyn?
It was in Manhattan. Yes.
So when you have a surgery, how do you drive in, or do you take the subway and you're just hobbling, or how does that work?
I took the subway in. We took the subway in, and it was a 7 minute ride in. And I have a good network of friends and people here in the city. I've been here for a long time, and people stepped up. So someone that I've known a good portion of my life was waiting for me with a car and my mom, and we drove out of the city, and that was it.
Great.
So it was pretty smooth, very easy. Everything had I couldn't have felt better in that moment about how everything had gone, and how what I was told is that so far everything had been best case scenario. My tumor markers had looked decent, and they felt confident that this was just going to be very quick. At that time, I had been told that the stem had looked good, and they were confident that there was no travel into my body. And so it was basically just the orchiectomy, and that was going to be it. And then things started to get interesting after that.
Yeah, we talked about this before. We're not going to name the hospital that won't be named, but you'll give a shout out to the good one.
Yes, absolutely. So I had my follow up with my urologist a week later. It was on a Friday, and no, it was actually on a Thursday. And sorry, I'm just trying. No, I guess it doesn't matter. But I had my mom had left, and on a Thursday, and then the following morning, I had actually gotten an email in my portal, and it had said that I had cancer, and I was a little distraught. The fact that, and I still am actually, the fact that you can learn that you have cancer via an email without speaking to a doctor. I didn't get to have a follow up with my doctor for a couple of days later to talk about what was going on, and it tormented my soul, and so many questions, and not knowing. You end up going down rabbit holes because of that, and that really hit me hard, and it still does to this point. I have a rule because of that I do not look at any single lab anymore. I will not look at a lab unless I am going to be talking with a doctor. Find it, there's no need to put yourself through that mental torture. And that it's just best to leave that alone until you can have a proper conversation. And fortunately, I didn't get to have a proper conversation about that. When I did finally get to speak to a doctor, I was told that everything was best case scenario, and that I should be happy about everything, from the makeup of the tumor to it not having spread to everything was literally best case scenario. So I did feel good about that. My doctor had sent me to an oncologist that he recommended. So I was able to go see him a week later. I met with him for the first time, and he had told me that I did not need any chemo. He told me that everything was best case scenario, that I should be happy. We literally only spoke about cancer for 2.5 minutes. And right then and there, that was sort of a red flag for me. I thought that this was much too serious to only give 2.5 minutes to speaking about cancer. I had a list of questions a mile long that I wanted to, and unfortunately, he seemed to brush a lot of them off. What he had told me in that moment was, you need to heal, and we're not going to have answers right now for the questions that you have. You need to just calm down, and we'll figure these things out as they go. And that was sort of calming in the moment, but in hindsight, wasn't good enough. And then I was on my way out the door. There was a very short appointment. And then I got oh, by the way, we found something with your gallbladder. I need to send you to a gastro, and we need to check this out because it's something that was flagged. As with a lot of different scans, things come up. So he had sent me. So 2 weeks later, on July 31st, I thought I was going to see a gastro. No, I had gone to a women's breast cancer center for an ultrasound. I had my ultrasound, and I said, when do I get to see the doctor? And the nurse laughed at me, and she said, we don't have any doctors here. We just do the test. You're going to talk to the doctor that you were sent here by. And in that moment, I was like, I don't even know who the doctor is. And she had told me that it was that same oncologist. And I was very confused. I did receive those test results that day, and I didn't look at them. Fortunately, I did have a follow-up with my urologist the next day, and he was able to look at them. He gave me the all clear and that everything was great, and that that was just going to be something else that was going to be active monitoring. And in that moment, I felt like I beat this. I felt like everything had gone as perfectly as possible. I was on top of the world. I went and I sat in the park and just enjoyed life and really just enjoyed being in that moment. I actually, that day, there's an indoor snowboard, ski and snowboard park here in the city. And so I actually wrapped myself in bubble wrap and duct tape, and I took myself for a celebratory snowboard day. And I felt really great about everything and awesome. I beat this. Decided that in that moment I needed to just enjoy the rest of the summer. I hadn't had much of a summer. I went and visited some really good friends in California and spent a couple of weeks out there and just decompressed and thought everything was great. But also in the back of my mind, I knew that it wasn't. And as much as I was enjoying the time out in California and being amongst friends and enjoying my time, I had a lot of anxiety in the back of my mind for my first oncologist appointment that would be following up again. And so in that time period, I decided to get educated. I didn't like the fact that I'd only spoke about cancer for 2.5 minutes. And I felt like I was being very shortchanged. And in that time period, I got educated and I began to reach out to foundations, and I began to learn about testicular cancer and the procedures and how things should be going. And this was something I was going to be living with, and I wanted to make sure I knew exactly what was going on. And I didn't feel like I had gotten that information. And I think that's actually how you and I connected as well. I had actually gone on to the testicular cancer thread in Reddit, mm-hmm. and had posted to see if there was a live in-person meetup for people in New York City area for me to connect with. And what I wasn't expecting was that there was not one, which surprised me. But also quite a few guys DM'd me and said, hey, I'm looking for the same thing. And I was actually able to meet somebody through that in my neighborhood. He DM'd me and he was like, let's get a beer. And I was like, okay. And that just happened to be the day before my oncologist appointment on September 9th.
And this
And
was with the original your oncologist or a different one?
yes, no, my original oncologist. And I was sort of just hanging out, waiting to feel out how that appointment was going to go, assuming that I was going to get set up for a CAT scan. And I had actually gone into that appointment with an open mind. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I also was a little apprehensive because of my first appointment with him, and also I had never heard back anything about my gallbladder. I was told that he was going to reach out, and he never did, and so I just sort of let that bedside manner kind of eat away at me a little bit. I was like, this guy just doesn't care. He's kind of a quack. So in that moment, reaching out and learning and even using Reddit, it was really great to connect with another patient, and particularly after my appointment that following day. So I'd gone to my oncologist appointment, and the oncologist came in and said, "Did anything change?" And I said, "No." And then he, excuse my language, but he walked over to the computer and said, "Oh, fuck, I hate this piece of shit computer." And then I sat there in silence for 15 minutes. And then he began to write something down on a trifold napkin. And in that moment, I said, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm writing down your monitoring schedule." And I was like, "No, you're going to send that to me, correct?" He goes, Oh, yeah. We spoke about cancer for 2.5 minutes. And he told me that my follow-up CAT scan would be at the first of the year. And that was it. And then he walked out. And then I said, "Hey, what about my gallbladder? You sent me to go see a gastro, and that didn't happen. And now you're not even mentioning it. And I have the right to know what's going on with my body when you send me to do things, and you're not even mentioning them. You never even contacted me before about this. And in this moment now, you're still not even talking to me about it." And he said to me, he goes, "Oh, do you want me to check that out? Let me see what the note says." And I was like, "Yes." And so he had checked it out. He goes, "Oh, it says here that you're supposed to see a surgeon." I'm like, "Don't you think I should know that then? If it's marked?" I'm like, "You need to do better than that." And he had recommended that I go see a surgeon. And there was no way I was going to go see somebody that he was recommending. And in that moment, it wasn't about, for me, getting a second opinion. We were just done. I was absolutely done with this guy. I left there, and I had reached out to the cancer counseling services from this particular institution, and they actually had called me as I was leaving. I had told them about what had happened, and they were actually horrified. They had told me that they had new doctors that they could recommend personally to me. And
within that same hospital system?
Yeah. And that this person could personally vouch for. And I was like, "Great, send them over." So they sent me a list of doctors, which was really nice. And the next day I started looking into them. But after that doctor's appointment, I was able to meet up with someone from Reddit. And that moment, I think, really changed my life. I credit Jesse. Thank you, buddy, for saving my life. Had I not met Jesse, everything would have been completely different. Sorry.
No worries. Shout out Jesse.
In that moment, he said to me, he's like, exactly what he said. He's like, "Dude, bro, I'm on my third CAT scan. You're not going to have your next one until January. You need to be done there. You need to get over the river to MSK. I'm at MSK, and that's where you need to be. And had he not really pushed me to get to MSK, things would be just devastating. I had actually gone through the list of doctors in the next couple of days that I was given by the hospital system. Not one of them treated testicular cancer. And it just seemed like nobody had any idea what was going on. The fourth one that I tried, they wanted me to hand deliver all my records. And I was like, there's no way I'm hand delivering records to a doctor within the same system. And I just got so frustrated. I said, all right, calling MSK. That's it. I don't really, whatever happens is whatever happens. And 45 minutes later, MSK had all my records. They were so nice. I had an appointment set up 2 weeks later, the end of September, and I thought I was going in for just a routine appointment. And I wanted to be in the right place just in case something did happen. And I didn't want to have to worry about it in the moment of a crisis. So I switched my care to MSK, and I had gone in and was told that all my imaging was out of date. My blood work was out of date, and that they wanted to start everything over from scratch on their systems, and that I would be getting a CAT scan and x-rays right away, and that they were waiting for me in another building and to go over there right away.
Now,
and
was that like a relief for you, or was that kind of more of a frustration, like, oh God, I got to do all this again? Or were you happy to like, okay, they're taking this seriously?
I expected all that to happen.
Okay.
So there was no surprise in any of that. I fully expected them to want to run every test on their own, and to be caught up with their own systems. And so I expected all of that. There was nothing unusual. Okay. I had all of those tests. It takes me about 35 minutes to get home from MSK. I had the test. I got on the train. I went home. I got out of the train. I was actually speaking to a friend on the phone that I hadn't spoken to in a long time, updating him what was going on. And I had gotten a phone call from MSK, and I just sent it to voicemail because I had already spent all day there. I was like, oh, it's more paperwork that they need right now. I'll deal with them in a little bit. Unfortunately, about 10 seconds later, that same number called right back. And I knew in that moment that something was serious. And so obviously I took that call. It was my doctor giving me an update already. And
this is the Sloan doctor, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was my new doctor at MSK. And he told me that my blood work looked good. My blood work looked good. My x-rays looked good. My CAT scan did not. And that my previous doctor was only relying on blood work, which was only 70% accurate. And that's why we do all the imaging. And I snuck one past the goalie with the blood work. And they were able to find a 3-centimeter lymph node behind my belly button that had continued to grow. So the cancer had not been removed by my previous institution. And that hit me pretty hard because in that moment he told me I needed chemo, and that was it. There was no other way around this, and that he was going to set me up with an oncologist, the best there is, and that's what I had to move forward with. And that was a shock. That was devastating to me. In that moment, I had no idea that this was going on. And, it still takes me back a little bit, the fact that they were able to miss this. I had a great appointment with MSK. My first meeting with my oncologist, I did have people that I did have people that I had zoomed in, my mom and a very trusted friend that were on the call just to listen in, make sure I didn't miss anything. We spent 2.5 hours talking about how everything would unfold. And they really set my mind at ease about how everything was going to go. I had a list of questions, and I did not even need to ask one of them because they were all answered thoroughly before. And he was one of the kindest, most gentle, thorough people I've ever met my entire life. And then the following week, I started my first round of chemo in the middle of October, and it was quite a process. I had no idea what to expect, but luckily, my team at MSK had really set my mind at ease. Like I said, what he had said to me was, I have professional athletes that you've seen from TV, and those guys will get leveled. And then I have New York beat cops that go back to work that day and doesn't even affect them. He's like, and we're going to see where you land, and we'll take each day as it comes. And don't worry, we have your back. And if you have any problems, we're just going to take this one day at a time, and we'll figure everything out. And that really made me feel really good, because I had been told that I shouldn't be alone for the entire 4 months of treatment. And I had no idea how that was going to happen. And so to hear that made me feel really good. And between my friends here in the city and my family, we just decided that we were just going to start, and we're going to let things unfold, and we'll see how it goes. And if I need to push the button and panic, then I'd have everybody I needed at my fingertips in a moment's notice.
That's great. And it's wild that you started chemo 2 months before the other hospital would have even had you do your scan. So
No, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't have had my follow-up CAT scan until January 1st. And the way that it was growing, I would have been in a really bad position. Mm-hmm. MSK was able to go backwards and see that the first hospital had missed the lymph node at 1.1 centimeters.
Wow.
So that's a big mess up. And I did file a complaint that had made its way all the way up to the top chiefs of the hospital. And they actually called me. I was just about to walk out the door for my first chemo appointment, and I got a phone call from that institution, and I was like, I don't have time for these clowns right now. And I sent it to voicemail. And ironically enough, I got the double phone call again, and that number called right back, and they said, we have the chief of the hospital on the phone. They would like to speak with you. Do you have time? And I said, no, I don't. I have more important things to do. And they were shocked. And I was like, they're like, you really don't have time? I was like, all right, I'll give you 15 minutes, and then I have a hard stop, and that's it. And so I spoke with the chief, and we spoke about my story for 6 or 7 minutes. And I was like, but you already know all of this, because it's exactly why you're on the phone with me. And he said, yes. And he went on to tell me, he said, what I want you to know, though, is that you should be 100% confident in the care that you've received. We've had our best people look over everything, and you should feel 100% confident in what you've received so far and the path that you're on. And so feel great about that. Though we need to discuss the doctor's bedside manner, we feel great about everything. And I was like, you sure about that? I was like, I don't agree with you. I think you need to go back and check your homework again. And he's like, is there something you want to tell me? I was like, no, there isn't. You've had your chance, and we're moving on. And he was a bit confused. by what I was saying, because I really just didn't want to discuss anything that was outside of their, it wasn't their business anymore. And so we sort of played a game for a minute. And then I said to him, I was like, he's like, you sure there's nothing you want to tell me? And I was like, you know what? I don't agree with you. You need to go back and dot your I's and cross your T's again. Another hospital doesn't agree with you. I don't agree with you. I'm about to walk out the door right now, and is why we have a hard stop, because I'm going to get my first chemo appointment. And so you're wrong. And there was a long, awkward silence after that. And so I actually definitely laid into him quite a bit after that, as nice as I possibly could in that situation. I basically told him, you need to go get your house in order. It doesn't seem like anybody there knows what's going on. From your doctors to you, to your best people, to even your cancer counseling services. You have no idea what's going on. And I never heard from them ever again.
Wow.
And that really sent me into a tailspin. As you're walking out the door to get your first round of chemo, you have one set of doctors that's telling you that you need to have chemo. And then you have supposedly this other set of doctors who are the best people telling you that everything's fine. And I had no idea what to do. And I was trying to reach my family. I was in a complete panic at that point. And luckily I was able to get a hold of a family member who talked me down and basically just laid it out straight and said, you've been very apprehensive about the care that you've received from Hospital A, and you're very happy with MSK. I think you need to continue to follow your gut intuition on this, and I'd hate to see you not get treatment right now. And that conversation literally took place at the door of MSK. And then in that moment, I walked through the door and got my first round of chemo. I did have another testicular cancer patient that had met with me that morning, and he was really great to have there. He had gave me some advice in that moment and said, look, you're going to have bad days. It's unavoidable that you're going to have bad days. So when you have good days, get out and enjoy yourself and make sure you live and just do what makes you feel happy. And that was probably the best advice that I'd maybe ever gotten. I don't understand why it has to relate to cancer, but he really helped me get through the next few months because of that. And I found that in my first week of chemo, it really didn't affect me too much. I was actually working out twice a day. I'd actually trained for chemo too, in the weeks leading up to it. I'm self-employed, so I was out of work. And so I ended up going to the gym twice a day because I figured, hey, all right, if I'm going to get knocked down, I'm going to get knocked down from up here and then come back to this point, not start from this point and go lower. So I made sure I was in the best physical shape that I possibly could have been going into chemo. In my first week of chemo, I was still going in a couple times a day to the gym after. I think I was so jacked up on steroids after. I actually I was running quite a bit. I felt great in those couple of weeks going into everything. Had no idea that there was going to be some issues coming.
Yeah. So week one, you did pretty well. And then I know you dyed your hair blue. So tell me about that.
Yeah. So my doctor had told me the last time I had seen him that my hair would be gone by the next time I saw him. And in that moment, I decided that we'd have some fun with it. So I actually had gone to my barber and asked him to cut my hair into a mohawk like Glenn Plake. I had some longer hair at that time, and that I wanted it to be dyed blue. And so he was aware of my situation and very happy to have some fun. So I had a 6-inch mohawk, and then the following day he dyed it blue and purple for me. And honestly, it was awesome. It was definitely unique, and it was great to put those pictures out on social media. And because for me, that was a signal that I was doing the best that I could, that I was trying to still do this and have a positive attitude and have some fun and not make this be a morbid thing. And I did run into some friends that had been very apprehensive about asking how I was doing. And they had told me that when they saw those pictures, they knew that mentally I was doing okay. And so that really was important for me in the end, and it did its job. And I definitely encourage people to have fun with it. Have some fun. If you're going to lose your hair, have some fun with it on the way out. Don't let it be something that's very morbid and difficult, because it doesn't have to be. And I love those pictures. Maybe it's the only time in my life I'll ever have a blue mohawk. When my hair did fall out, I actually kept strands of it. And so they look like feathers in a small vial now. And it's just something personally that I have to remind myself of this time period. And I'm glad that I have them. In those moments between week 1 and week 2, I felt great. I actually felt great. I ran 8 miles the Saturday before I started my second treatment. I thought everything was going great. My treatments were Tuesday through Saturday. So I went in on that following Tuesday thinking that I was going to start my second round and that everything was going great because I felt great. Unfortunately, after I got my blood work done, I had met with the fellow. Things seemed a little down, and they weren't very upbeat. And they had told me that my white blood cell count was too low for treatment. And that hit me mentally hard because I was prepared to move forward. And it also, I had a schedule that I wanted to keep, because I was going to have to be going through the holidays, and that was difficult. And I wanted to be done before the holidays. Mm-hmm. So that hit me pretty hard. My white blood cell count was 0.7. So there was no way I could move forward. And my team was pretty somber. And I didn't really understand why. I do now. Like I said, I don't look at any labs. So I had a very unique relationship with my teams that just tell me where and when, and I'll do it. I'm not going to push back. I'm not going to ask a lot of questions. Obviously, you guys will be telling me there's a problem before I even know there's a problem. So there's no need for me to look at my labs and go down rabbit holes. Yes. So I had to get a booster for my white blood cell count. I was told that there'd be some pain in my lower back and my hips. And that night was extremely difficult. Probably one of the most difficult nights of my life, actually. I broke my femur when I was younger, and I put the pain that happened that night on par with breaking my femur. It was excruciating. I had muscle spasms all night. I didn't sleep at all. My bones, I thought they were going to explode. Like I thought my hip bones were going to explode. I remember being on the side of my bed at 4 a.m. I felt like the Incredible Hulk. I was just screaming in pain. And, in hindsight, I should have gone to the hospital that night. I thought I was going to die that night. There's no other way to put it. And the next morning, I was terrified that I might have to get another one of the shots. And I had to go back and get blood work. I went back to the hospital that morning. I got blood work and I waited. And finally, they said that you're all set. And ultimately, they were hoping my white blood cell count was going to get to 4. I actually went to 8. And so that was why I was in so much pain. I over 10x my white blood cell count less than 24 hours. And they actually told me that was one of the few times in life that being in shape and being healthy would actually cause you pain and work against you. Because you have that ability to go 10x, where maybe someone who's not as healthy isn't going to go as high. So they're not going to experience that excruciating pain. And after that, we were able to finally just get into cruise control for the next couple of weeks, which was great. We finally had things leveled out. I did get the white blood cell booster at the end of every treatment. After that, it was administered remotely through a patch in my arm. And those weren't as harsh. Luckily, the next couple of weeks, things were just going absolutely great. Like I said, cruise control, which is what we were finally looking for. Managed to get through Thanksgiving, managed to get into December. I had 2 rounds in December, and December was a difficult month mentally, as you start to see friends and family enjoy the holidays, and that was something I was unable to do. And so that hit me pretty hard, and I knew that I was going to be in for a rough month. What I did do is I bought myself a present, and I had bought myself new snowboard boots, and I put them in my living room at that time. And it just gave me something to aim for, that I was going to get back out there and that I was going to be able to do this. And so that was something I did for myself, and it was definitely important to me. Between my 3rd and 4th round, I was actually able to visit my sister for a couple of days in Vermont, and I went snowboarding 4 times. Wow. In between my 3rd and 4th session, and I felt good. To be able to do that, it's something that I'm definitely proud of. I have some videos and of that day, and I actually had posted something to Reddit, and actually got 200,000 views and wow. 3,600 likes because and it was great. I posted just finished chemo and going snowboarding, and it was amazing to see just the people come out and see that video and just leave good words of encouragement. And so that was great. And then Christmas time, the final week was, that's where things got a little bit more difficult. I actually had been trying to figure out how to stack up the holidays. I actually just had my mom again come versus having multiple family or friends. And it was nice just to go through that last round of treatment and really introduce her to my teams at MSK. And she was able to see how nice and how thorough everybody was there. And it turns out that was actually like a really nice week because the city was pretty empty. I could get back and forth from the hospital without any problems. Everything went very smooth. It was a week that I thought was going to be a lot more difficult mentally, but it turned out it was actually really nice. I had to be in the hospital for treatment Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Mm-hmm. And so on Christmas Day after my treatment, I had a couple friends that came and visited with me that day as well. And I told them that we were going to go do something a little unique after. And so we had gone down to one of MSK's other buildings, and they do the holiday hallway. And so the tradesmen actually decorate their entire hallway. It's in the same building as the pediatrics ward. And it was just really nice to experience that.
Yeah.
One of the more unique Christmases that I've ever experienced, but it was really nice to feel connected to that community. And we finished up the week. When I finally felt awful, was my last day of treatment. I think that was my breaking point after 4 months. And I felt good in that I made it 4 months without feeling awful. I did not have any nausea. I felt pretty good. Like I said, I'd been snowboarding, running, working out. That last cycle, though, hit me pretty hard. But I made it through it, and I made it through to that point, and that was great. Had a couple days off. Actually, my birthday was coming up. So I finished my treatments December 28th, and my birthday was January 2nd. I actually went snowboarding again on my birthday to celebrate for myself. So I felt really good about that. January 4th, 2 days later, I had my follow-up CAT scan. And then January 7th and 9th were my follow-up doctor's appointments. I had gone in on I had no idea what the scan had said. I got the results. I had no idea. I just remember riding the train into the hospital and was just very relaxed and zen and just allowed it to wash over me, and whatever was going to happen was whatever was going to happen. And I had met with a new fellow first, one that didn't understand, one that didn't know that I don't look at a single lab, that I had no idea what was going on. And she had said to me, she said, everything looks great. And as you probably already know, your CAT scans look great. And I was like, no, I don't know that. She's like, what? And I had to kind of explain it to her. And then she's like, well, everything looks great and you should feel really good. And that was a nice moment of pause right there. And then when my doctor came in, he had told me 3 lines that I'll never forget. As of this moment, we consider you in remission. You are free to live a normal life again. You have your life back. And
amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. As we come down the home stretch here on time, just quickly, let's talk about, how things have been since January for you. I know you've done a good job of writing out your story, and now you're sharing it on the podcast. I mean, what does the future look like for Bob Jordan?
Yeah. So in that moment, I took some time to reflect. When someone tells you have your life back, that's pretty heavy. I took some time to reflect. I took a vacation. Obviously, that was the first thing I did. But when I came back, I realized that things were broken. Things were not right. I'd been through a lot, and I sounded the alarm in that moment that it was time to switch care from physical health to mental health, and to be open and honest about that this was hard, that I've been through a lot, that I've been diagnosed with cancer. I've been misdiagnosed with cancer. I've gone through chemo. I didn't have eyebrows. I didn't have hair. And in that moment, I knew that things weren't right. And so I made sure to tell family, friends that I needed more support, that this wasn't over just because I had been in remission. It's not over. It may never be over. And so what I've been doing is actively switching my teams, and I've built out new teams of mental health providers through MSK and through foundations as well, connecting with post-cancer patients as well to be on the same page. Obviously, I've been meeting with testicular cancer patients regularly, but I think it's great to connect with other cancer patients. And it's been nice to meet with breast cancer patients and women and people from different ages as well. And then you start seeing patterns that some of these things are very, we all have the same story. And so it's great to help each other out. I have also been working on writing out my entire story. I think it's important. It's been, there's been so many details that even friends and family haven't known. And so I want to get that out there. And it's also been very healing for me. So in those moments where I'll process, I'll write it down, and then I make my peace with it and let it go. And I'm really looking forward to that being complete. Going to continue to work through the programs. MSK program is to pull you away from cancer. Not that it didn't happen, but how it doesn't become such a central thing in your life. And so I'm working through that process and pretty much throwing everything that I can at this to make sure that there's no lingering problems or anxieties that happen 9 months, 2 years from now. So it's super important for me right now, because the one thing that I noticed that when you finish chemo, when you're told that you're in remission, there's nobody standing there with a 6-foot cardboard check and a free trip to Disney World. What you get is the door and a lot of bills. And for someone like myself who's self-employed, I didn't work for 9 months. And that hit me financially very hard. And it's going to take me a long time to work through the bills that I have. And that creates a lot of anxiety for me. And it's going to take a while. And so I just know that if I ignore things, they're going to cause problems. And I just don't want that. I don't think that that's appropriate. You know, I know there's a lot of stigmas out there around men's health and even mental health. And I'm here to challenge both of those. I'm not going to back down to either one of them. And I'm going to continue to be outspoken about both of those things. And I hope that the things that I've done inspire other people to do exactly the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that they will. And I think this is a good place to wrap it up. And maybe we can, plan for later this year, next year, to kind of catch back up and see how your mental journey has unfolded, if you're willing to share at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I don't think this is over. It's not over. I'm still in the middle of this. And actually, even just yesterday, I had my first follow-up CAT scan last week. And like I said, I don't get the results. I don't look at the results. And I had my follow-up doctor's appointment yesterday. And I'm very happy to say that my scans were clean. And that I did have great doctor's appointments yesterday. And so I feel good about that. I can finally start to feel more confident about moving forward in the future. Everybody in my teams is very surprised about all the moves that I've been making, and they are just encouraging me to keep doing exactly what I've been doing. And that's what they've been telling me. Just keep doing what you're doing, making all the right moves. And this is going to take some time. And that is definitely a lesson that I've learned while I look in the mirror. And, because it's taken time for my hair to grow back. It's taken time for my eyebrows to grow back. So there is a patience, and I look forward to sharing everything that I've documented along the way and putting that out there. Like I said, I documented every part of this. I took full body pictures of before I started chemo, after I was done with chemo, a couple of weeks ago, I took pictures to see how my body has changed, and I actually stood in the same position, wearing the same things. And so I look forward to sharing this whole process in a way that is unique and authentic to me.
Yeah. Well, let's connect again in a year. Where can people find you before we wrap this up?
My Instagram is Factory808, and I have a web page. It's 808 Designs, and you can find my email and contact information there. Please reach out. If anybody needs just any support or just wants to learn more about some of the processes that I've done along the way, I'm very happy to take some time and share more with anybody, because these things really do help. They help me a lot, and I want to pay that forward.
Bob Jordan, thank you so much for being on It Takes Balls.
Thank you. Have a nice morning.
Thanks, you too. For more information and resources for your testicular cancer journey, visit testicularcancerAwarenessFoundation.org.